So what is the best modern retro motorcycle? Well, they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, so in this video we're going to focus on the middleweights. Without further ado, hang out with me for a few minutes and let's dive into a big old pile of really tasty motorcycles. What's up everyone? It's Alex. That's right, you read the title correctly. Today I'm going to try to make at least half of you really mad as we dive into trying to determine what the absolute best middleweight modern retro motorcycle is as of the making of this video. And just to clear it up real quick, by middleweight, because these things come in so many different sizes, I decided to break this up into several videos for a series. We're going to start with middleweights, and if you guys dig it, we'll do a lightweight and a heavyweight video as well. So for middleweight, we're going to define that as being anything greater than about 500 cc's and less than 1,000. So this video is going to cover modern retro motorcycles bigger than 500 cc's and less than 1,000 cc's. Real quick before I go any further, if you dig the video, you dig what's going on here, hit like. If you haven't already, subscribe, because that tells me what kind of stuff to keep making for you guys. And if you dislike the video or you just hate my guts, hit dislike, because then at least one way or another, I know I got some kind of emotional response out of you. Just to cover a couple of important little pieces of housekeeping real quick as well. To be on this list, the motorcycle had to be readily available and produced at the time of the making of this video. And please keep in mind that half of this is going to be based on actual facts and specifications. The other half of this will be based on my personal opinions from riding and enjoying these motorcycles myself. And as such, those opinions may differ from your opinion. Your favorite motorcycle may not have made this list for various reasons, or your favorite motorcycle may be on this list and I may not pick it as the absolute best in my opinion and by specs. Doesn't mean it's not amazing. Could be the best motorcycle out there for you. Everyone is subjective in their likes of motorcycles. If you disagree, please put your comments below. I would love to have a conversation on this. Other viewers would like to discuss it with you as well. So if I don't pick your favorite, let me know in the comments below. Let me know why you love it. Let me know what it is. And let's have a civil discussion about it. As long as you disagree in a civil manner, we're all good. If you're mean and toxic to me or my other viewers, then I'm just going to delete your comment anyway, so don't bother. Moving on from that, let's introduce the contenders in today's brawl for the best currently produced modern retro middleweight motorcycle. First up, weighing in at a supposed weight of around 500 pounds, depending on who you ask, wet or dry. Of course, we have to do the Triumph Bonneville. And by Triumph Bonneville, since we're doing middleweights, we are of course talking about the 900cc series of Triumph Bonnevilles. They come in a lot of different flavors, shapes, and sizes. We will be focusing on just the 900 Bonnevilles as a whole. Be it the Street, the T100s, the 900 Scramblers, the 900 Thruxtons, Triumph Bonneville 900cc's. With the Triumph Bonnevilles, you have a 900cc parallel twin engine motorcycle, producing horsepower in the mid-50s and up, depending on year and exact model. Putting up torque numbers in the upper 50s and up, depending on year and exact model. Coming standard with 5-speed transmissions and some fancy models moving to a 6-speed in later years. Chain final drive. Historically, these were air-cooled engines, but the modern iterations have moved to liquid cooling on the engines. And with a modern retail price tag in the US starting at around $9,300 and going up from there. For the next contender on the docket, we have the Kawasaki W800 series. And I'm going to put the W650 series kind of under it, but we're going to focus on the W800 series because the 650 was, you know, the predecessor. So the Kawasaki W800 series of motorcycles in either the classic or the cafe, whatever your flavor preferences may be. You are looking at a 773cc parallel twin engine motorcycle again, putting out in the neighborhood of 47 horsepower, around 46-ish pounds of torque, depending on who dynoed the thing. Comes standard with a 5-speed transmission, chain final drive as you would imagine, weighing in somewhere around 475 pounds supposedly. I say supposedly because I'm not putting these things on a scale myself. This is what's been reported widely. With a US retail price tag of around $9,100, though as I have covered before, you can usually find these things on sale for a pretty good amount off, but they retail for $9,100 before any sale pricing. Next contender up, weighing in at a supposed 417 pounds, hailing from the storied artistic motorcycle lineage of the Italian Peninsula. We have the Ducati Scrambler 800. This thing is more fun than a barrel full of monkeys. Coming in at 803 cc's in a V or L twin engine configuration, depending on which you prefer to call it. We have an air-cooled 75-ish horsepower 50-ish foot-pounds of torque producing, 6-speed transmission having, chain driven, middleweight, modern, retro, sporty powerhouse. With the highest horsepower and supposed lowest weight on the list, this thing is going to be tough to beat, but we've still got more contenders to come and we've got a lot of categories to cover them in. Ducati Scrambler 800 carries a current US retail price of around $9,500, you know, before any discounts or anything. I haven't seen any of these on sale, but I'm sure different areas are noticing different things. Our next contender for the middleweight title, also boasting decades and decades of Italian motorcycling lineage. I, of course, am talking about the Moto Guzzi V7 series. These as well come in some different types and flavors over the year, but we're just going to cover the current iteration of the V7 series as a whole. So with the Moto Guzzi V7s, you have a 744cc transverse or sideways V-twin engine that is air-cooled, putting out in the neighborhood of 52 horsepower, 45 pounds of torque, matched up to a 6-speed transmission. It is the only one on this list that is also bolted up to a shaft final drive system, weighing in around 425 pounds, supposedly, with a US retail price starting at about $8,400 depending on which flavor and type you pick, and then going up from there, or going down from there if they're on sale, which I do see these on sale, at least more than the Ducatis. Last up on today's list, the final contender. I saved it for last in order to throw any claims of bias right out the window. We have the motorcycle sitting right behind me, the Royal Enfield 650 Twin Series. I'm going to be talking about the Continental GT and the Interceptor in this. We're just going to kind of lump them all together because engine, frame, and everything, you know, basically same thing, just different styling, different seating in them. These are also the, we'll call it the youngest motorcycles on the list because it's been out the least amount of time with only having a couple years under its belt now in the United States. So with the Royal Enfield 650 Twins, you have a 648cc air-cooled parallel twin-cylinder engine producing in the neighborhood of 47 horsepower and putting out somewhere around 40 pounds of torque, give or take a couple. Matched up to a 6-speed transmission and a chain final drive, weighing in somewhere around 435 pounds, supposedly. With a US retail starting price of about $59.99, so call it $6,000. Also depending on whether or not they're on sale or whether you're dealing with a crappy dealer who wants to charge you too much for your motorcycle, but retailing somewhere around $6,000 in the United States. So those are our 5 contenders. We have the Royal Enfield 650, the Triumph Bonneville series, Kawasaki W800 series, the Ducati Scrambler 800 series, and the Moto Guzzi V7 series of motorcycles. I narrowed this down to 5 because otherwise this video would be an hour long. If I forgot your favorite motorcycle or if it just didn't make the list, let me know in the comments below. Let me know why you love it. But these bikes all made this list for one reason or another, and 5 is plenty to choose from. So, the categories we're going to judge these babies on is going to be based on the following. This is not purely a best bang for your buck or purely a best performing. This is a combination of several factors. We're going to look at reliability of the motorcycle. We're going to look at ease of finding one. How readily available is it for most people to find? Because something could be the best motorcycle on the planet, and if you can't find one, it doesn't do you any good. We're going to look at customizability. How big is the aftermarket support for the motorcycle? How customizable is the motorcycle readily with parts available without having to do a whole bunch of custom cutting and welding and all that kind of nonsense? So how customizable is the motorcycle? What is the value for the buck? How much does the motorcycle cost versus how much motorcycle you're getting? And the last purely undefinable category, just for the funsies of it, mojo. The last category will be, what kind of mojo does the motorcycle have? How much fun is it? What's the feeling of it? How much magic is there in the motorcycle, or is it just a retro throwback to be a retro throwback? So overall reliability of these 5 motorcycles is almost a complete toss-up if we're being honest. I have been very hard pressed to find reports of people having major problems consistently with really any of these motorcycles. I would say as far as that goes, since the Royal Enfields have been out the shortest amount of time, it's not able to win because it's only been out for a couple of years, whereas the rest of these have way more years under their belt on average. So just to be fair, I'm going to not let the Royal Enfield win the reliability war. Mine has been reliable, but it hasn't been out long enough, so we're going to be fair on that one. So I'm going to give the reliability category to a tie between the Triumph Bonneville and the Kawasaki W800. I have been able to find the least number of reports of reliability problems on those two motorcycles in particular. Not that the Scrambler is not reliable and not that the V7 are not. I've actually seen a lot of really good reports, especially out of the V7, and mostly good reports out of the Ducati Scrambler, with the exception of people complaining about, maintenance on Desmo valves and stuff like that with the Scrambler. But for the reliability category, we're going to give a slight edge to the Triumph Bonneville series because they've been making these things for, 20 years again, or over 20 years again now in various forms. Very reliable motorcycle, very hard to question the reliability of a Triumph Bonneville. And the W800 thus far also, since being put back into the world years ago, seems to have built a track record for also being a very reliable motorcycle. So reliability, we're going to give a tie between Triumph Bonneville and the W800. So who wins for availability? How easy are these motorcycles to find? This one's pretty much a no-brainer, guys. The Triumph Bonneville series wins in availability. The Bonnevilles have been back out for over 20 years again. Every Triumph dealer is going to stock Bonnevilles in various shapes and sizes because it is a core part of Triumph's business, and the retro modern motorcycle is a big part of what they do. So if you have a Triumph dealer near you, they're going to carry Triumph Bonnevilles. You will be able to find Triumph Bonnevilles. Most of these other motorcycles are going to come in a close second because most Kawasaki dealers that I have seen will have at least one W800. It might not be in the flavor you want, but usually they will try to have at least one W800. The Royal Enfield dealers can be few and far between right now. I take for granted that in my area there are 2 of them, so it's easy to get, but a lot of people are telling me their closest Enfield dealer is 100 miles or more away, so I can't give availability to the Enfield because the dealers are just too few and far between right now. The Ducati Scramblers, most Ducati dealers are going to carry a couple of Scramblers, but again, Ducati dealers are not as close together. It seems like Triumph dealers usually are easier to find than a Ducati dealer. So Ducati might win a pretty close second place because I generally do see a Scrambler at a Ducati dealer, but not the kind of numbers that I do the Triumph Bonnevilles. And the Moto Guzzi V7s, if you have a Moto Guzzi dealer available, they will have a V7, but again, the Moto Guzzi dealers are fewer and further between, so in the availability and ease of finding it, both new and used, I'm going to have to give that category to the Triumph Bonneville, guys. Just completely unbiased, have to do it. Customizability. This should come as absolutely no surprise, but in the customizability department, again, I have to give it to Triumph Bonnevilles. They've been out so long, there are so many aftermarket parts for these things and so much customization support. No matter what you want to do to any flavor of Triumph Bonneville, you're going to be able to find probably bolt-on parts and kits, etc. to get it done. There are whole performance shops and custom shops that only deal with British bikes and deal with Triumph Bonneville type motorcycles, okay? So as far as being able to do anything you want to it, you will find that a Triumph Bonneville will be the easiest and most available parts to get as far as customizing your motorcycle. Now, aftermarket support for the Royal Enfields has been growing. There's a lot of great custom stuff out there. There is great support for the Scramblers. There's okay aftermarket support for the V7 and not much aftermarket support I've seen for the W800. Most of the V7 and W800 stuff is going to be custom stuff or it's going to be harder to find. But by far, for customization and ease and availability of customizing the motorcycle, there's no way the Triumph Bonneville wasn't going to win that category. Best bang for your buck. Which of these motorcycles gives you the most motorcycle for the money? This is actually probably the hardest category because it can be subjective based on what your definition is of most motorcycle for the money. For example, the Ducati Scrambler is by far the highest horsepower machine on this list, right? But it's also the most expensive motorcycle on this list. The Triumph Bonneville series has a lot going for it, and if you look on the used market, you can find especially older Bonnevilles for decently reasonable. But if we're talking apples to apples, new to new, the Triumph Bonneville, starting out in the mid-9,000s for what you get, cannot be the best bang for your buck because Triumph at this point, in my opinion, is charging a little bit too much for basic Bonnevilles as far as retail pricing goes. I can remember when 900 Bonnevilles were $7,900, brand spanking new. And that wasn't even for a basic Bonneville black. That was for nicer Bonnevilles. So being in the mid-9s, the Bonneville can't win this category. As far as best bang for your buck, what you're getting as a total package for the motorcycle, actually, I have to give this one kind of sort of a tie between Royal Enfield, which I think Royal Enfield does come in first place, but based on some of the sale prices you can get on some other ones, that's kind of arguable. The W800, the Kawasaki W800 right now can be had for a couple $1,000s under retail, which puts it down closer to the $7,000 range. putting it within about $1,000 striking distance of a Royal Enfield 650 for a slightly larger engine motorcycle. And also, some Moto Guzzi dealers I have seen discounting the V7s, which start out around $8,400. So you can typically also get a V7 if you look hard enough, down around that 7 to 75 range or better. So that puts the Royal Enfield, I think the Royal Enfield is going to take first place in this category because you get a lot of motorcycle for $6,000, unless you're dealing with a dealer that wants to bend you over a park bench and wants to charge too much. I can't control that. But for retail pricing, for what you get with this thing, the length of warranty and the amount of motorcycle you get for that price, it is almost impossible to beat the Royal Enfield for that category. The W800 and the V7 are going to come in a close second, I will say, only because you can usually get them on a decent sale price. I don't see sale prices very often on the Ducati Scramblers. If you do, let me know, but I almost never see those go on sale. And I very rarely see the Bonneville on sale. If it is, it's less than $1,000 off, which still puts it considerably more. Not that it's not a lot of value for the money, and not that the Scrambler is not amazing for what you pay for it, but overall best bang for the buck, we're giving that to the Royal Enfield 650 Twins, with a close runner-up in the W800s and the Moto Guzzi V7s. Mojo. The undefinable, completely unfair, made it up from the top of my head category of mojo. Which of these motorcycles is just absolutely the most fun to ride? Don't care about price, don't care about specs, don't care about anything else. In riding these motorcycles, which of these motorcycles is just the absolute most hair on fire, butt naked handstand fun to ride? It's the Ducati Scrambler, guys. All of these motorcycles have amazing mojo in their own way. I bought a Royal Enfield 650 Twin, so I think it's a blast to ride. I love this motorcycle, but objectively speaking, of all these motorcycles, the W800, by comparison, it's an awesome motorcycle, but it's really not any more fun or any more thrilling than the 650 is. The Triumph Bonneville, same way. If you get like a Thruxton RS, or you get any of these motorcycles and you put some work into it, you can make a Triumph 900 a lot peppier and a lot more fun. But just in stock form, it's basically just like riding a slightly more powerful W800 or a more powerful version of the 650 Twins. You know, in my opinion, just overall speaking of it, not downing on it, I love them, but overall, I would say the V7 actually comes in second place to the Ducati Scrambler as far as mojo, just because it's very different. With having that transverse V-twin, it feels very different when you rev it. If you stop at a light and you rev the motorcycle, it actually like torques to the side a little bit and does some interesting stuff like that. And because of the overall flavor of it and having even more of a classic feel than most of these do, the V7 actually has a lot of weird, quirky, interesting mojo of its own. But the absolute most fun, most blast, most exhilarating motorcycle on this list is definitely the Ducati Scrambler 800. It's like taking a classic motorcycle, Scrambler-ish idea, but a little bit more street-oriented, and mixing it with a modern, really powerful supermoto to make this almost perfect marriage of light, fun, flickable, playful motorcycle, lots of power, but with that kind of styling. So for the mojo category, the Ducati Scrambler 800 definitely wins overall in the fun factor and just pure mojo in the entire batch. So after all of that waffling and all of that comparing back and forth and all of me talking to the camera, which motorcycle wins the middleweight class for overall best modern retro middleweight motorcycle at this time? Well, it may come as a surprise to some of you that my own motorcycle did not win. I bought this, I love it, but if we're being objective and we're looking at all different categories, it is hard to deny that the overall reigning champion at this time of middleweight modern retro motorcycles is the Triumph Bonneville series. Triumph fans out there, I know you're cheering and loving it right now. Everybody else, I didn't pick your motorcycle just because it's hard to overcome the overwhelming presence that Triumph Bonnevilles have had in this space for the last 20 plus years. They basically reinvented and popularized the modern retro motorcycles, a modern motorcycle with retro styling. These other motorcycles have things about them that put them head and shoulders above the Bonnevilles in other categories, as I've shown. And obviously I preferred what I got for my money with the Royal Enfield. I prefer the fun factor of the Ducati Scrambler. I like the quirkiness of the V7. I love Kawasaki motorcycles, and I love that they put out a modern retro for Kawasaki fans. But all in all, between the lineage, the reliability, the amount of aftermarket support, the community surrounding it, and the quality you know you're going to get, and everything else, the Triumph Bonneville has to win the entire series. I'm talking Thruxtons, Scramblers, T100s, all of it, okay? And we're going to get into the 1200s in a different video, but this is just the 900s. The 900 Triumph Bonnevilles are the absolute reigning king as of now of the middleweight segment in modern retro motorcycles, objectively as a whole. So, now that I've made everyone mad that doesn't have a Triumph Bonneville, leave your comments below. Let me know what your favorite was. My personal favorite is my Royal Enfield 650 Continental GT, but I can admit it's not for everybody, and there's a lot of people out there that the Triumph Bonneville is the king of their heart. So, let me know what you think in the comments below. Agree with me, disagree with me. Let's have a conversation about it. Everyone be nice, be constructive. If you're just going to be toxic, I'm just going to delete your comments, so just don't bother. As always, guys, have a great day. Ride safe. I'm Alex. Peace.